Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We're on Volume 21, Chapter 5. And my gosh, really emotional set chapter right here. I have not read into Chapter 6. I promise that I will be doing a live reading of, or at least first time recording of Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. So this week we're going to be doing a single chapter, and that's fine because it's a meaty chapter. It's a very meaty chapter. There's a few points in it that I'm going to be getting really into some weeds, but really good stuff here, and I'm looking forward to getting into it, and hopefully I don't cry too much. I think I'll hold myself together. Really well. But yes, as per usual, greatly appreciate you guys' support. Thanks for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are having a great Monday, and greatly appreciate you guys' support, your kind words, hitting the like button. Don't forget to hit the like button down below. And yes, as per usual, greatly appreciate you guys' support monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. And since I'm recording this before Mushoku Monday actually airs, I have to do a voiceover for who actually does monetarily support the channel. So thank you so much to Nicholas with a super, Rose Moist with 2 supers, Paramir with a super, Sabana Sue with a gifted membership, and Nogard with a gifted membership. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. But with that said, let's dive into it. Chapter 5, What's Stopping You? So much emotion. This is going to suck. Ryu's tried to keep the shock he felt from seeing Zenith and Claire from showing. He wasn't sure that he could win the standoff, or that everything would turn out okay. The only thing he could control was himself. It only took a second to run the mental situation of how to get Zenith out. He couldn't use a teleportation circle in front of this many people, but he knew the capabilities of the Temple Knights. He didn't know how strong the Temple Knights were that were lined up behind the Pope, but if the Blessed Child was telling the truth, they wouldn't be stronger than the Keepers. Just knowing that, he could achieve one of his goals. He'd get Zenith, Cliff, and then Aisha and Geese. Then they would get the hell out. He was worried that Aisha and Geese were being held captive somewhere, but he can find out where from one of these guys. With that plan in mind, he escorted the Blessed Child to a chair and stood beside her. He kept a tight hold on her arms. I'm so glad you're all here. It'll make everything go more quickly. Ryus was perfectly calm. The words rolled off his tongue easily. It'd been a while since he felt like himself. I believe it's the first time a number of us has met. I represent the Dragon God Orsted, and I came here deep in my bonds of friendship with the Mill's Church. The title of the Man God sent ripples of unease shivering around the table. No one here had ever met Orsted in person, and he seriously doubted any of them knew of his objectives or what they were up against. Possibly some of them hadn't even heard of the 7 great powers, but every one of them knew the title of the Dragon God. It was usually found alongside another title, Demon God. Owing to unfortunate circumstances, I currently hold the Blessed Child's life in my hands. Ryus pointed to her, concentrating his magic to make a lighter-sized flame. Tension in the room mounted. I can't tell you how much I regret it all had to come to this. To stoop to taking hostages is to bring dishonor upon the name of the superlative, uber being like Sir Orsted. Alas, it was necessary measure in order to facilitate these negotiations, and to guarantee my own safety, and to that of my subordinates. I hope that you'll all understand. A superlative uber? Ryus's tongue ran away with him there. He wasn't trying to be funny. He coughed before continuing. Why was this attempt made on my life? Why was I forced to bring shame upon my master's name? Scanning the table, Ryus's eyes rested on Claire, who was frowning. Would anyone here care to explain? If no explanation is forthcoming, I, along with the Dragon God Orsted and all of his followers, will have no choice but to move to open hostilities with the Mill's Church. This wasn't an empty threat. If the Man God had the top members of the Mill's Church in his pocket, it was a potential development that he had to consider. Okay, first of all, I think him visibly threatening the Blessed Child, I think is a bit much. I think that's a bit much because he already has the threat with him. He's got her in his possession. And I think the idea of him showing open hostilities immediately is kind of annoying. But I think it does technically go to his point. He's trying to show them he's and that he means business. So I do kind of follow him with that idea. He's trying to show himself as having the upper hand in the situation. Come in there, show them that I have an authority, which is the Dragon God. I'm and I can easily do this. But I do feel like that's a bit much. I think that right there sort of hurts his argument that he didn't intend to do this, that this was something that was forced upon him. But I guess I do give him credit in the idea of him at least showing that I will do it if I need to. But I still think it's a bit much. I think it's kind of unnecessary in the situation. I guess it sort of puts him in a position where he can't control himself. I guess that's the best way to put it. He can't control himself. And I think that's something that people will respect more, that you have control. And I think that there is an element of showing respect through your own self-control. If it's not necessary, then don't do it. But yeah, I do agree with him in the idea that it's not necessarily an empty threat because, yeah, if if there, and I have my predictions, if there is somebody in this room that is working with the man god, yeah, technically Orsted's already said that he doesn't really care about Millis because they're gonna help anyways. Like they just don't want Laplace. He's a demon. No matter who runs the place, they will still go after Laplace, even if the demon inclusionists, if they win, they're still gonna go after Laplace because it's still a threat and they're still demons. But I think if Rudius did tell Orsted, yeah, their entire leadership is people of man god. Oh, he's gonna be like, all right, I'm coming over. I'm on my way. I gotta make some donuts. The room stayed silent. Not one person took the bait. No cries of challenge. Maybe they were freaked out by the earlier fight, or maybe he said something wrong. At the least, Rudius made it clear that he was pissed off. Lord Rudius, I appreciate that you're angry. The Pope spoke from the back of the room. Pope Harry Grimoire sat with Cliff at his side. He was the most important guy here. However, as you yourself acknowledge, you are unacquainted with several of our number gathered here today. May I introduce everyone? I won't take much of your time. Rudius tried to work out what his angle was. Why would he make introductions? Buy time? Maybe they needed time to capture Aisha? But there weren't many people here. It couldn't hurt to know about the others. It's important, when making demands, to do everything in the right order. People will only hear you out if you condition them properly. If they weren't ready to listen, nothing would get through. Yeah, I think right here, based on what I know from later on, it does technically make sense that it seems like the Pope is trying to put this in a position that Rudius meets them because he wants Rudius to be known by them and for them to know Rudius. Rudius is here to make demands and get what he wants, but the Pope is trying to establish a relationship here. Pope already knows what's going to happen. The Pope literally knows what's going to happen. Pope, in my opinion, set up all this stuff, and he wants to make sure that Rudius is at the table to make connections with him and Orsted. The Pope isn't here to give him what he wants and let him walk out the door. The Pope's trying to establish something here. Of course, I shouldn't have rushed things. Thank you. Cliff, if you would be so kind. Yes, Your Holiness. Good day, everyone. I am Father Cliff Grimoire. His Holiness Pope Harry Grimoire is my grandfather. May I ask you to begin? Cardinal LeBlanc. Interesting. He hands it over to Cliff. And he even says here, he's introducing himself. Rudius already knows this. I'm wondering if he's introducing himself to a lot of people here that don't know that he is the grandson of the Pope. I think the Pope's trying to get his son in here. And even later on, when Cliff speaks up, he's letting him. I think he's letting Cliff take control of the room. He's trying to prop up his grandson, getting him ready for later on when he takes over. Get yourself in a position of power, boy. Speak and gain respect from people. Because he never stops Cliff here in a minute. It's very interesting. The man whose vestments rivaled the Pope stood. His face was fat and round. He was a leader of the demon expulsionists. I am Cardinal LeBlanc Farlin. I supervise the Temple Knights and assist the Holy Father. He was effectively number 2 of the Mills Church, advising the Pope, much like the Prime Minister in a monarchy. The Pope and his relationship with the Cardinals in the Mills Church weren't like other religions Rudius knew, but Rudius did know the Pope and the Cardinal were working against each other. The Cardinalists wanted his position. Yeah, again, public-facing, we're good. Behind the scenes, we're stabbing each other. Sir Belmont, a man in white armor who sat next to LeBlanc, stood up. His face was scarred, and he only had one eye. He looked about 40. The white armor meant that he was a cathedral knight. Man, did he look grim. From what Rudius remembered, the cathedral knights were like paladins of Millis. He must be ticked that Rudius caused havoc in his town. I am Balmon Nash Vennick, deputy commander of the Arrow Company and the cathedral knights. He spoke curtly before sitting down again. Yeah, I immediately recognized that Nash Vennick part. I immediately recognized that part, which is really funny because I recently here talked about Gash. It's like so weird that sometimes I talk about something during a week and then I go to read it and like, what the hell? They just suddenly come up. Apparently I need to start talking about Soldat and stuff just to get Soldat to come back in the picture. Now watch, he's in the next segment. Rudius recalled that name before. He kept glaring steadily at Rudius, but didn't comment. Maybe his face reminded Rudius of someone, Orsted or Rijerd. No, the knight that Rijerd knew had a similar name, Galgar Nash Vanek. I knew a Galgar Nash Vanek. I am his son. He's a man I was glad to have known. Why is Rudius saying that? I mean, yes, technically through proxy, Rudius knew him. And yes, he'd be glad that he knew him because he was helping him get to the central continent, but he didn't really. In the end, it was Therese because, yeah, Duke Backshil or whatever didn't care about the letter. He thought it was a forgery. Now, technically, Therese did come in and verify the letter, so it could be in the end he still needed that, but he didn't know the guy. Rijerd did. So it could be a proxy thing. Interesting. His father was a missionary knight, but it had been acceptable to join a different order. He made it to the deputy commander, so he hadn't failed in his filial duties. Sir Railbard, 2 more knights in white armor came next. They introduced themselves as Arrow Company senior captains. These companies were some kind of military unit type of affair. Senior captain was the next most important rank after the commander, deputy commander, and company leader. Lord Carlisle, you may skip me. Rudius and I spoke earlier. The introductions continued. There was an archbishop and a company leader from the Temple Knights Shield Company. Rudius decided to remember their names, but wished he could exchange business cards. Yeah, there's a lot of names. There's a lot of voices. I'm like, crap, which one was going to use for this one? I thought about just being lazy and just do voices randomly. Lady Claire. Rudius wondered why she was asked to be here amongst these important folk. Maybe a witness. Maybe she made the fake rumor of the kidnapping. Why had she brought Zenith, though? Rudius wanted to demand answers right away, but he felt an explanation was coming. I am Claire Latria, wife of the Count Carlisle Latria, and this is my daughter, Zenith. Please forgive her demeanor. I'm afraid she's unwell. Very good. Now that Lord Rudius is with us, I would like to hear what happened. First of all, Rudius, I'd like to clearly establish the context for all this. Would you mind? No objections here. I'd like to hear it. With only a few hours since the fight, it seems suspicious that the important folk of each order was all gathered here, but the order's commander's absence tempered that somewhat. It felt more like, upon hearing the abduction, they grabbed who was available, though it struck Rudius as a bit odd to see the Temple Knights, who'd been in the middle of all this standing here. Yeah, I was... Initially, when I read this, I was like, yeah, it does seem kind of convenient that, again, Rudius was gone for like a couple hours, and then when he comes back, literally all these extremely important people were just here. Now, a lot of them could be within this headquarters. This headquarters is like the bigwig place. So a lot of them could be stationed here. But then you have people like Carlisle. Why is he there? There's a lot of very important people that are, working elsewhere that they could have been visiting, but that would have been a lot of convenience for them to just all be visiting at the same time. But yeah, there is a presence that's not here. But again, what they say later on is the blessed child was mentioned. People drop what they're doing and they get on a horse and they go. All right, where shall we begin? Forgive me. I heard the details but a few minutes prior. I haven't had time to process it yet. As the Pope rubbed his brow, Belmond, or rather Besh, he just gives him a name, Besh. Belmond, or rather Besh, spoke up. I believe we have the least information here. We came here at the Cardinal's summons. Our orders were to return with the corpse of a man who sought to kill the blessed child and bring ruin upon the country. As Rudius knew from Zenova, a blessed child was an important national asset. Her kidnapping was good enough cause to invoke national ruin. Although the church looked after the blessed child, making her their private property, her loss would still be a blow to the whole nation, enough that one such summon couldn't be ignored. Upon arriving, however, we found her guard unconscious and the blessed child gone. Now the keeper himself is here, angered and declaring himself blameless. As Besh went on, he shot a glare at the cardinal. Given the summons we've received are at odds with reality, I would like to declare our neutrality in these proceedings. As Besh sat down, the Pope smiled widely before turning to the cardinal. It's like already Pope's like, nice setup right there. Just teed it up. Like we just set up the shot perfectly for me. All right, let's get it started. Everything's already going my direction. Now it does make me kind of wonder. I respect Besh for kind of just stepping back and saying, okay, yeah, we were told to come here because of this, but now he's here and he's mad. It seems obviously that it's not lining up with the cardinal. On one end, it could be the Pope told him, yeah, this is what's going on. You're going to say this. And he said that. And the Pope's ready to follow it up. It could also be that, yeah, there is a respect here to be given that maybe he doesn't like the cardinal. But either way, him coming here, it's like, yeah, things aren't adding up. But he's being a little bit too critical of the cardinalist. Maybe, yeah, like he says here in a minute, yeah, maybe the whole thing about the murdering him didn't pan out, but he still did attack, in a way, the blessed child, so it does line up somehow. It's interesting. It leads me to believe that in the end, like I've already set up here, the Pope's puppeteering this. Your Eminence, might I trouble to explain why you chose to deliver such a summons? Please face Mr. Rudius when you answer. Why? Why face Rudius? Again, it could be the aspect that he's telling him, explain yourself. Pope already knows what's going on. Explain yourself. Make yourself look like an idiot. Talk to this angry person that you wronged. You so wronged him. Shame. Or does he want him to look towards Rudius so the blessed child can look in his eyes? This made it look like it was a cardinalist's dirty work. The cardinal stood with a gentle smile. I received a tip-off from the House of Latria. The message said that someone had been overheard on the streets, making troubling statements about kidnapping the blessed child. The House of Latria overheard it. Maybe someone was trailing them when he visited their house last time. Rudius hadn't noticed anything at all, but he did make a scene before leaving. She might have sent someone to keep an eye on him, to make sure that he didn't try something. He did talk about kidnapping the blessed child out in the open. Anyone could have heard them. It could have easily reached the ears of Elatria's servant, simply by coincidence. When I looked into the identity of the speaker, I found it was Rudius Grey Rat. The subordinate I sent to investigate claimed that Rudius was abusing his relationship with Therese to get close to the blessed child. It seemed he didn't usually give much credence to rumors. Roadside banter wasn't out of the ordinary, and the Temple Knights didn't have the time to go after every nasty comment heard on the streets. But Rudius had demons amongst his closest friends, and he was close to the grandson of the Pope, who pushed for the accommodations of the demon folk. On top of that, he'd also severed ties with the Latrias. Then right after that, went for the blessed child. That distracting the blessed child's guards so that he could kidnap and murder her lay clearly within his capabilities. It was a clear deciding factor. Rudius had the ability and motive. It's a nice lineup. It is a really nice lineup. I decided to move against him first. I see. But Cardinal, that doesn't match up with the testimony of the Cathedral Knights. There's a significant difference between kidnap and murder. I imagine the messenger I sent got a little carried away with relaying the message. The Cardinal's face was placid, but the latest facts told Rudius his intentions. That does seem I don't know, with the blessed child, I feel like that's sort of the same thing. Like, not the same thing as in murder is the same as kidnapping, because yes, one the end result is death, and the end result is just grabbing. But they're both, I would see, as equal threat. Case in point, if the Temple Knights were standing there, and the blessed child was with them, right in front of them, and then there was a person that walked up towards them, if that person said, I'm going to kidnap that blessed child, what will be the end result? They will kill that person. If the person walks up and says, I will kill that blessed child, what's the end result? They will kill that person. Either way, in like the protection of the blessed child, the end result, their response will be kill person, whether it's kidnapping or killing the blessed child. So why is it different here? If he got word somebody will kidnap or murder the blessed child, what will be his response? Send somebody to kill him. I don't understand what the difference here is. Now, yes, when the Cardinalists contacted Therese, she said that she pushed for them not to kill Rudius, and it was accepted. The Cardinalists chose that point. That's fine. Just take his arms off. But even then, even right there, that is a break in communication. But still, the point here is that when he contacted the Cathedral Knights, he told them the difference there. He told them the wrong information about what Rudius was going to do. So maybe it's the fact that the Cathedral Knights act differently based on the information. This seems like a break here. This seems like an odd little break here. But it also does seem like it's the Pope really just getting into semantics. He's picking at things to make him look bad. I think that's obviously what's happening here. I don't think it really matters. I think the difference doesn't matter in the end. But I guess it's also a way for them to basically be like, we're wiping our hands of this whole thing. We don't want to get involved. You guys bicker at each other. You guys bicker all the time. Like, they fully know the two of them bicker all the time. You just go at it. We don't care. The Cardinal wanted to set up Rudius for attempted murder of the blessed child. Then make it look like the Pope was directing him. Sadly for him, the Temple Knights got knocked out. Now everyone could see that Rudius didn't want to kill a single one of them, let alone the blessed child. Yeah, that's the positive fact that he has not hurt the blessed child, and he didn't kill the knights. So all these things are adding up to a positive. Again, this is why I was saying earlier, the idea of him bringing out a flame in front of the blessed child, it's like you're creating a negative. If you want to work with these people in good faith, show your good deeds. Show that you have a track record. And yes, he's already established a track record up to this point. I have not killed anybody. Blessed child is not harmed. It's a track record. And it gives credits against what the Cardinalists told them. This guy's trying to kill her. Obviously not, because everybody's fine. He just was defending himself. Everything points right now to him defending himself. Again, bringing a flame out in front of the blessed child does not show that. Control versus showing strength through actions, but not showing it through threats, I guess is the best way to put it. Very well. Before we come to you, Sir Carlyle, let's hear from Rudius. What say you? Rudius was silent for a moment. After a second of consideration, he realized he didn't need to lie. I admit, I did let my mouth run away from me and raise the idea of kidnapping the blessed child, but that was only a heat of the moment comment. My companions immediately rejected the idea, and it never went anywhere. Then why did you seek out the blessed child? I sought my Aunt Teresa's support In resolving a family disagreement with the Latrias, I realized that it may have appeared that the blessed child was my target. Oh, but if that is true, how is it that you now have the blessed child as your hostage? The Pope's voice was friendly, even though his questions felt like cross-examination. It was a voice that said, don't worry, just tell the truth, and everything will be okay. He knows exactly what happened. And he's like, boy, just tell me how they screwed up. And it's like, no matter what you say, it's going to fit in exactly what I want to do. Just tell him. You have the position of power here. He's sort of like, the Pope is almost like setting this up as a benefit to them, to everybody in the room, that we appease Rudius in a way, and that somebody else screwed up, and that Rudius doesn't have to worry about it. As I said before, I took an important hostage to guarantee my own safety. Only after the blessed child gave me her consent, of course. Is that true? It is. I only needed to look into Rudius' eyes to realize that he was guiltless. The blessed child looked around the table. The Pope and the Cardinals. The Pope and the Cardinal casually averted their eyes. Must be hard having such guilt to cover up. If that is the case, why did you knock out the Temple Knights? Surely, you could have resolved this through words. I was trapped inside of a barrier without warning and subjected to a ridiculous trial, while all my protests fell on deaf ears. They told me that they were going to cut off my arms. He probably didn't need to knock them all out. Leaving Therese standing and reasoning with her might have been a smarter move. I totally agree with that one. That probably would have been better. Had Therese been there when the blessed child came out and saw him do nothing, she might have listened. No, he had no clue the blessed child would show up. Yeah, from that track of mind track, I understand there, but you could still have talked to her. Like, you still could have talked to her. No, he had no clue the blessed child would show up. The vibes back then had not made it feel like they were going to resolve anything with words. True, Therese was not really speaking what she was thinking. Like, we get the perspective of Therese where she's constantly thinking, it's okay, Rudius, it's going to work out in the end, just trust me, give up, let us chop off your arms, sorry, bro. But from Rudius' perspective, the entire thing is her literally, he did pick up on the fact that she had a hesitation in her voice, that it was cracking a little bit, but her words were literally saying, we're not going to listen to anything you say. Just take your beating. A trial where the verdict was already decided. Rudius had experienced something like that in his past life too. Damn, even now, 21 volumes in, and Rudius is still thinking about getting tied up on that fence. All for speaking out in that line. It was so funny here recently, I went through a hate thread, and that was included into it. This idea that, oh, Roxy fixed him already in the first episodes. No, she didn't. I see. What, then, is this family disagreement all about? Rudius seeing Claire twitch, and something dark welled up within himself. The memory of her petty narcissism played out in his mind. He could put up with anything she did to him. What he couldn't tolerate was what she said to Aisha. What she said to Zenith. She'd been horrible to Geese as well. My mother, that woman, was abducted by the Countess and kept away from me. Frustration mounted as he spoke. She intends to force my mother, who cannot even speak, into marriage with an unknown man, with no regard for my mother's own desires. She even intends to force her to bear children. When I objected, the Countess used cowardly means to kidnap my mother. Then, when I went to demand answers, she feigned ignorance of the whole affair. Everyone at the table looked horrified. Therese and the other Temple Knights reached for their swords, faces grim. The blessed child frowned slightly. It looked like Rudius had the upper hand here. That's all I have to say. Any further words escaped him, so he left it there. He communicated his anger, and everyone was looking at the Latrias. They were drawing their swords. It seemed like they were drawing their swords in response to him yelling furiously. But everybody looked horrified. Were they drawing the swords because they were angry at the fact that what he just said? Or that's weird. I mean, I get what it probably is trying to say there, but it just feels like, why are they drawing their swords and looking at the Latrias? And they're obviously preparing themselves in case Rudius does something. Both Carlisle and Claire looked at Zenith with pity in their eyes. Zenith, in turn, stared blankly up at the ceiling. All right, Lord Carlisle, Lady Claire, everything we just heard seems to put the blame of this affair at your feet. What do you have to say for yourselves? The two exchanged a fleeting look. It made Rudius wonder what they were plotting. He didn't get a sense the Cardinal was going to rescue them. Nope. He ain't gonna put himself in threat in order to stop that. I mean, unless he had some sort of excuse to protect them with. It's a cut and dump kind of thing. Like, sorry, for my own safety, you're gone. My wife acted on her own initiative. I know nothing about it. Carlisle had thrown her to the wolves. His own wife. Maybe that wasn't so insane, though. If Claire really was like this all the time, and Carlisle had grown steadily more fed up with her. Maybe he had decided this was time to dump her. Rudius knew that no matter what chaos Edis caused in her outbursts, he'd never do that to her. He may get fed up with an annoying quality of his wives, but he'd never abandon them. He'd never gotten married in the first place if he didn't believe that. Carlisle doing this kind of thing got under Rudius' skin. He remembered something that Cliff said ages back. In Millis, when a marriage was arranged, the bride's family provided the dowry. In exchange, the groom swore to protect the bride's house with their life. The definition of a house in these circumstances was a bit unclear. Still, he couldn't believe Carlisle was really going to abandon Claire here. Very cool they bring that back up, because that was, the moment that I read that part, I'm like, yeah, that's what he said. It was that whole like period of time where Rudius was trying to figure out what he was supposed to do for Sylphie. Like he's gonna marry Sylphie, and he's like, what do people do in this world to get married? Like what's the expectation here? And yeah, that was what because Zenoba said what was the traditional for Chiron, and Cliff said that whole thing. So that was kind of a cool little callback there. But this is a tough one, honestly, because it is an aspect of Claire literally causing some sort of havoc, which is sort of this like breaking of the law in a sense of their order. So it's like, it's not really so much I see that Carlisle is abandoning her, but more so the idea of what is he supposed to say? Is he supposed to lie and say that he was a part of it to defend her? Yeah, I can definitely see that he could probably say that she was he could make an assumption that could defend her. Like, I assume that she was doing something for the good of Zenith. I trust that she would do something for the good of our family. Is it abandonment when he literally has no clue what she was doing? He could know, and again, it implies as much because Therese said that she was contacting Carlisle, and he was against this. It's just that he didn't get there in time to possibly stop her if those letters were true, and what Therese said that was his take was true. He could have been trying to stop her, but what is he going to say here in her defense is a big question mark. I am head of the family, and shall therefore take full responsibility. But he does take right there. I wish to make it clear, however, that this is not a decision made by the whole Latria family. That little addendum was how he showed that he had a conscience. He is taking responsibility. He did say that it's her actions. I didn't know. It's a truthful statement. She did this of her own volition. I wasn't a part of it. We find out later on it might not be the case, actually. But right here, he's saying, I will take responsibility. But he's also saying it's not a decision by the family. And again, he was married into the Latria family. It's a very well-known family. He was married into it. He doesn't want the name Latria to be destroyed because of her actions. He's taking responsibility for it. Now, again, later on, it does imply that he was involved, but he doesn't want the name itself to be destroyed by this. I see. Lady Claire, what say you? Claire didn't answer. Her mouth clamped shut in a hard line. She looked like a sulking child. Silence will be taken as admission of guilt. The Pope looked around the table. Then, without waiting for anyone to speak, he continued. In that case, we find Lady Claire responsible for this affair, along with Sir Carlisle as her collaborator. Lady Claire shall face punishment, and Sir Carlisle shall bear responsibility for her actions. Are there any objections? Rhys felt something was wrong. It was too easy. They missed something crucial. It was like they were just going through the motions to reach a conclusion. While the Cardinal called for no objections, and the others echoed and nodded, Claire's face was gray, keeping her composure. She wouldn't say anything, no excuses, but then her half-assed excuses would just make him sick anyways. He was happy so long as Zenith came home with him. After this, he'd never go near the Latrias again. He wouldn't let Zenith, or Aisha, or Norn, or anyone go near them either. It was over. Are you satisfied with that, Rudius? It was not our intentions for things to happen this way. We never intended any offense to you, or to invite the enmity of Sir Orsted. I hope that we can remain friends. The Pope was still smiling, with a friendly smile. Looking to the Cardinal, Rudius noticed that he was smiling as well. But he was sweating, and when their eyes met, he swallowed. Yeah, it sort of implies something here, because Rudius is like, something's wrong here. We're missing something, because this is going way too smoothly. Everything's just falling into place. It's all working out. And yes, it seems like that all is lining up to the idea that the Pope orchestrated this. And he had it all laid out. He had exactly all the pieces in play that he wanted. The moment that Rudius took the Blessed Child, let's make it happen. It's all in play. Rudius came back, perfect. Let's play it out. I know, we all know this script. I know the exact script how it's going to play out. Let's get this done. It all goes smoothly because the Pope knows how this works. He has the structure. He knows who's going to follow his lead, and it's going to play out exactly how he wants it. It's kind of the reverse effect of what happened with the whole situation. The last big meeting that Rudius was at was the whole thing around Ariel. Everything plays out with the assumption that people are going to fall into line. Fall into line. Of course, back then it didn't happen that way because Ariel made her move first and twisted things up. The Pope knows who's going to fall in line. Now the question here is why the Cardinal swallows as sweating. One half, it could be that the Cardinal knows that he's at fault for all this stuff, and he's going to lose a lot of his power because of everything that just happened. Yes, the Latrias are taking blame, and yes, he's losing a strong ally in Carlisle and the Latrias. But it could also be that he's afraid that Rudius might say this is not enough, and if Sir Orsted is still an enemy of theirs, it's going to make it even worse for him. Please accept it. This can't get worse. I can't have this get worse. Naturally, we want to avoid conflict with Sir Orsted. I don't know how we came to foresee the resurrection of Laplace, but I will not spurn any ally in that fight. We shall have to seriously consider this proposition to allow the sale of so-called demon figurines at a later date. Yeah, he had a talk with the Pope. He had a talk with the Pope early on. Curious if he's playing into the Pope's hand because of that information that the Pope may have brought to him about Sir Orsted and the whole thing with Laplace and everything. Is he making these decisions right now because he sees a threat that is actually coming? Or is this all him playing it up like he's being performative? Yeah, I agree, everybody. Laplace bad is coming and Sir Orsted's fighting that. Of course I'm on sides with Orsted. He can't be an enemy of Orsted because he's fighting Laplace. Rudius worked out broad strokes of what was going on. The one behind the kidnapping accusations, and all the rest was the Pope. Rudius was pretty sure the leak came from his agents. He'd stolen the Latria's name so that the Cardinal would be provoked into making an attempt at his life. Either that or he had agents in the Latria household. The details didn't matter. He couldn't have known for sure that the Cardinal would act. From the Cardinal's perspective, Rudius was a definite problem, a follower of the Dragon God who'd shown up as friends of the Pope's grandson. Yeah, easy person to push into action. Rudius caused problems for the Latrias, who were in the Cardinal's faction. Then that family squabble served as cover to get close to the blessed child. To the Cardinal, Rudius probably looked like an assassin sent by the Pope. You couldn't blame him for wanting Rudius dead. Had he only sent a few temple knights because he underestimated Rudius, or because he seen this coming and wanted to be ready? Had the Pope known that Rudius wasn't going to kill the blessed child? Or did he not care either way? If Rudius had died, it would have been a loss for him. While he was Cliff's friend, he wasn't one of his people. That's a good point there. Yeah, for sure. If the blessed child if Rudius did kill the blessed child, he wouldn't care. But there's this idea that, yes, technically if Rudius did die to the Temple Knights, either way, it looks bad for the Cardinalist. Like, either way, no matter how this plays out, the Pope wins. Like, Rudius being in the situation, it's a win-win situation. And it does technically all play into what I was saying before, where it's like everything sort of starts playing out very conveniently. Very conveniently. Throughout all this, the Pope hadn't done any of the dirty work directly, nor had he ordered Rudius to carry out the kidnapping. He was confident that he would get through, even an inquisition with the blessed child. And if all else failed, he could claim that he was just caught up in the demon expulsionist trap. Maybe he even used this opportunity to repair relations with Orsted. In the end, the Latrias took the blame for the whole affair. Rudius would bet that neither the Pope nor the Cardinalists had given a damn who ended up blamed. The only reason the scapegoat ended up being Claire was because Rudius was angry at her. That's the sad reality, and I think that's what Cliff picks up on. That's really what Cliff picks up on a minute here. You're all just throwing her to the pit, and Cliff knows full damn well who's orchestrating this. I think this is sort of one of the reasons, one of the subtle reasons, there's a bigger reason. One of the subtle reasons why Cliff gets a little mad here in a minute. He knows exactly what's happening in here. And he kind of wants Rudius to kind of say stop, because it's turning the mistakes that the Cardinalists made in trying to have this power struggle, and the Pope using this to knock down the Cardinalists a couple pegs. It's a small civil matter. It's a small family squabble that's getting blown out of proportion, and Cliff knows full well why it's getting blown out of proportion. Because these two are squabbling against each other. The Cardinal and the Pope. Rudius, are you going to let this happen? This is too much. Stop. All Rudius wanted to do was get back at her. The Pope could declare victory, knowing he'd struck a blow to the Cardinalist via the Latrias. The Cardinalist faction was only going to lose her. Rudius felt like he had been played, but he was getting Zenith back and having his revenge. At this rate, he'd have the mercenary company up and running soon enough. He had zero reasons to object. It's so weird. It's so interesting. I love this, actually. I love this, but it's so conflicting. Sounds good to me.
Very well. Precedence dictates that Claire Latria be sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for inciting national mayhem.
Ooh, what? Rudius let out a weird noise.
You object, Rudius?
You said 10 years?
I did. Claire Latria kidnapped a family member of an associate of the Dragon God. Her actions also led to an attack on the blessed child.
But, I mean, okay, yeah, but...
Her behavior has insulted powerful individuals and incited mayhem. Were you not such a good-hearted man, the blessed child would likely already be dead. 10 years is merciful when you consider it in light of that.
Rudius was a bit shocked, but assumed it was fair. Yeah, it's like one of those things like, I guess that's, yeah, if that's what you guys normally do, I guess that's supposed to be fair. Like, 10 years? What? Okay, yeah, yeah. And again, this is just putting all the blame on her. All this blame on her. The kidnapping of the blessed child has nothing to do with Claire kidnapping Zenith. No, it's not correct. It's not really. Yes, it caused this domino effect, but it was Rudius's choices here. That's like saying if you got a phone call from somebody saying, hey, dude, I just seen somebody over here. They got your dog. And then you run out the door and you steal a car and you run 50 red lights and you run somebody over and you finally arrive at where the person is with your dog, that you're not going to get charged for all those weird things you just did because they stole my dog. Again, it's dumping all the blame on her. The Pope wants to have this plan play out because he gets up a few pegs, and the Cardinal wants this to all go away. It's sad. And again, Cliff sees this. Rudius was a bit shocked, but assumed it was fair. It did blow up enough that these big shots were all gathered. Claire probably wouldn't be the only one to suffer, but he was also conflicted about 10 years imprisonment. 10 years back, he'd barely just broken up with Edis. It was a really long time. He couldn't do much about it, though. Claire was the one who decided to play dirty. This was all started because she abducted Zenith. When he didn't say anything, the Pope finally spoke up. Again, I like this idea of like thinking about, yeah, 10 years is a long time. 10 years is like your life is like no advancements, no changes. You're just stuck in prison. 10 years of your life gone. And at her age is pretty much, again, I don't really know the full, I think they mentioned life expectancy in this world at some point. I think it kind of lines up to that. So I guess she wouldn't really have much of a life left after this. But again, he's even acknowledging it here. She started it, yes, technically.
No objections. Good. Then this provisional court, presided over by at least 3 bishops and 3 senior captains, finds Lady Claire Latria guilty of inciting public mayhem and recommends 10 years imprisonment. I leave it to you, Sir Carlisle, to arrange a formal trial for her.
The Cardinal, Bishop, and Knights all solemnly intone their agreement.
Good. Sir Belmont, as our neutral party, I request that you take the Latrias into custody. Once a formal sentence has been passed, the outcome shall be conveyed to the rest of you.
The Pope looked over to the Cathedral Knights and raised one hand. Besh and 2 others stood up at once, then came trotting around the table towards Carlisle and Claire. As they passed Therese, she frowned for a split second. Poor girl. One of the knights, she's like, it sucks because it's like she was trying so hard to resolve this situation. One of the knights pulled out a set of monocles and put them on Carlisle. Carlisle allowed his hands to be bound without a word, and then followed the knight from the room. Now this is weird because they say right here Carlisle leaves, and then later on he pops up again. It's like, what is going on here? From the room implies the idea they left the room, but anyways, Claire didn't move. She half stood up. Her whole body was trembling. Her expression hadn't changed, but her shoulders and legs were shaking. I hate this. I hate this so much. I don't like Claire, and right here it's like, damn it, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. But again, this is similar to the whole situation with Zenobia and Pax. I didn't care about Pax. I cared about Zenobia. And here, I don't like Claire. I don't care about Claire. There was a side of me that kind of wanted her to be a mama bear. But it's like, I hurt for Zenith. I right here hurt for Zenith. I hurt for Therese.
All right, Lady Claire.
The Cathedral Knight approached her. She was going to be arrested and thrown in a cell. It did leave a bitter aftertaste in Rudius's mouth, but it would also mean one of his problems was gone. Suddenly, Rudius's eyes met Cliff's. Good old boy Cliff, too pure Cliff over there going, Rudius, the hell are you doing? He looks over to Cliff and, Rudius, the hell, dude? What are you doing? Ugh. He was staring at Rudius, his expression all panic and confusion. Rudius wasn't sure what it was about. It's like, what, Cliff? What's the matter, Cliff? What's wrong? Everything's working out great, huh? Sure, there was parts of it he didn't like. This kangaroo court setup issuing this sentence. It felt a bit vindictive. These were all the rules their people played by, right? Reese thought of how the Temple Knights had tried to pull a similar stunt on him. Yeah, this is your function, right? What do you want me to say? This conclusion is all above the board so far as the culture was concerned, right? Here we go. This part. I forgot about this part. Oh, I forgot about this part. Come on, Lady Claire. Besh reached out slowly towards Claire, like he was trying not to provoke her. Claire looked down at her hands with fear in her eyes. I hate this. It's making me feel bad for her. She looked like she wanted to leave her body. Suddenly, some went ramming into Besh. He staggered backwards, his heavy armor clinking. Without missing a beat, he sank into a fighting stance. Moving to draw his sword, he froze. What stopped him wasn't Claire. It's her daughter. Standing between Claire and Carly, I think that's supposed to be Besh. It says Carlisle, but I think it's supposed to be Besh because Carlisle's gone, but whatever, I'm not looking it up. Was Zenith. She put herself between Claire and Besh. She had both of her arms outstretched, blocking the way. Her face was still blank as she faced him down. But the hostility was clear in her actions. She was protecting Claire. Sure, Rudius won't do it. Zenith's gonna do it. If her grandson won't do it, Zenith will. And I'm so conflicted. I am so conflicted by this, by the way. So conflicted. Either way, like, for me right here, it's like the moment this happens, if I'm Rudius, I'm over there. I know that Besh isn't going to attack Zenith, but it's still like, okay, this is what Zenith wants. And again, I'm conflicted because there is an element here of, does Zenith know what's going on? Even Rudius is putting it in his head. Does she know what's going on? Does he know what Claire's trying to do? And again, we don't have the full picture. It's obvious that based on the end of this chapter, we don't know. There's something going to be revealed, but there's still an element of like, I mean, did Zenith see something? Or is it simply because it's my mom? I don't care. I don't care what my mom does to me. It's because it's my mom. So Zenith, in her mind, his mom's in trouble. She's afraid. That's the key thing, and that's why I think that she didn't stand up when Carlisle was taken away. He's not afraid, but I think she senses that Claire is afraid, and that's enough for her to want to stand up and do something. My mom is scared. You're scaring her. She's afraid, and nobody else is protecting her. Nobody else is helping her, so I will. And there is a question mark. Is it more that she's devolved in age, so she's like a child and protecting? But that doesn't make sense to what comes up later. It doesn't make sense to her getting up and going and do that, going after Carlisle and doing all that kind of stuff and slapping Rudius. If she was in the mind state of a child or her childhood, she wouldn't know who Rudius is. She's protecting her mom right now. Something is wrong. And again, we might find out that Zenith knows something that Rudius doesn't know, but I think it's simply that Claire's in danger. I don't even think that Zenith knows what Claire's doing. But it's still shocking. Still shocking that it seems to imply, or at least by all indications to us, this is the first time we've seen that Zenith is responding to Claire. Again, back when Rudius was talking to Claire the first time, Zenith just sat there. They came over there, they checked her out. She didn't respond to Claire at all. And again, I was pointing out the idea that with Geese, she stood up and excited. Claire, she just sat there. Just sat there. Claire came in, looked at her, didn't do anything. And I'm always kind of questioning this kind of stuff. Is it a response because simply Claire's scared and that's mom? And that's all it takes. Again, it's a family thing. Rudius even points that out. She only did things like this when it was the sake of her family. Is it simply that? She was protecting Claire. My mom's in danger. Does she know something? Is it like always where she's sitting there constantly trying to come out and her body won't move? All that's a question mark. But yeah, this is a struggle. This is obviously a struggle. And she does a lot of other stuff here in a minute, too, that indicates that she's not, again, she's understanding the situation. It doesn't seem like it just doesn't seem like she's communicating it. Everything keeps pointing to the idea that she just doesn't seem to communicate or show emotions, but everything else seems to be there. She's registering what's happening. She's just not expressing it right. All she could do is move. The thing that keeps kind of puzzling me about Zenith really is the staring at the ceiling, because everything else seems to be functioning. So again, this is me trying to equate it to my own experiences with memory loss and degradation of the brain and whatnot. It does kind of come to a point where it is mostly just staring at a ceiling. It's staring at some direction and never really staring at something. It's almost like this distant stare. Like there's the eyes aren't looking for something, but there's still other processes happening. There's still other things that are going on. There's still responses elsewhere, like hand movements and grabbing things, but there's just like this blank stare. Like they can't register what they're looking at. And so when I see this whole situation where Zenith is sitting there and she's just staring up at the ceiling, but yet she still gets up and says, "Stop, get away from her. Stop, get away from her." And then also to go over to Rudius and say, "Smack. The hell's wrong with you?" Go up to Carlisle, smack. I'm getting ahead of here, I know. It doesn't, I'm trying to piece it together, and it all kind of comes down to almost the only thing I can think of is there's brief moments of getting back to herself. Like it's almost like a flip back and forth. Brief moments of, I'm back, move. Or maybe she's even fighting herself the whole time. I'm sitting there, and this stuff is happening, and she's screaming, "Move, body, move, body, move, body. Speak the words. Tell Rudius to stop this." And the words aren't coming out. And then finally, when things start happening, and somebody's going to come get my mom, finally she just says, "Move, body," and she stands up and pushes the guy. Okay, I'm moving now. Get over there and smack my boy. Because he's not listening to what Cliff is telling him to do. He's not helping me with the situation. He's got the situation wrong. That's the hope. He's got the situation wrong. Mom isn't the bad guy in the situation. She's doing something right here. It's just my prediction. I'm getting way ahead of myself right now. I know it. But my prediction is that there's a missing piece that the Latrius can't say. They can't say why they're doing what they're doing. And I think it has very much so to do with the Mill's faith, or at least it goes against the Mill's faith. Maybe possibly they're trying to do something that will be taboo that could help Zenith. I hope so. Rudius was even more at a loss than before. Why would Zenith protect Claire? Because it's my mom. Rudius, why are you trying to protect Zenith? Rudius, why are you trying to protect Zenith? You've never known Zenith. You barely knew her. Why are you protecting Zenith? Yes, you can claim it's because its dad loved her with all of his heart. You know exactly why you're protecting Zenith. It's your mom. Simply, it's your mom. Was it a spur-of-the-moment decision? She had reacted to her surroundings before this, though. And whenever she did, it was always for the sake of her family. Was she reacting automatically? Protecting her mother without understanding what her mother was trying to do to her? It's a good question, but the opposite's true too. Does that matter? To Zenith, does that even matter? To Zenith, her mom's in danger. Does it even matter what she was doing to her? And that's kind of the question that's going to be posed to Rudius. Amidst all of this, does it matter? Because it's still your grandmother. It's still Zenith's mom. It's still Teresa's mom. And to them, she's important. And again, everything counting up to this point has indicated Claire's not acting normal. Everybody is saying she's not acting normal. Orsted said, not acting normal. Teresa said, not acting normal. Rudius was missing something. He never had the right answer in this sort of situation. It was just like this with Pax, now that he thought about it. He had to get it together. If thought through clearly, you might see what you missed. The issue was that there was no time. Besh would push Zenith aside and take Claire and wait in seconds, then step up there. No thinking. Just step up there. And again, I'm conflicted. And a lot of me is just because of Zenith. It's not Claire. For me, it's not Claire. It's simply Zenith. Zenith doesn't want this. Would he stop him? Could he do that without working out the consequences first? Shouldn't he get more information before acting? While he pondered, someone else called out, bringing Besh to a halt. Love Cliff, dude. I love Cliff so much. And I'm going to probably lose it here in a minute. I need a break. Hold on. I need a break. While he postponed, someone else called out, bringing Besh to a halt. Stop this, please. A small figure came pushing past to stand in front of Zenith. It was Cliff. He's just sitting there trying to figure out what to do, and then the Cliff's like, I'm going to stand up there. I'm going to walk up there. I'm going to defend her. Good boy, Cliff. This isn't right. Ganging up on an elderly woman, pinning all of this on her. St. Millis would punish us for this. How dare you? A mere priest presumes to speak for St. Millis and defy the ruling of the church. You think this is the will of St. Millis? A husband spurning his wife while their child stands alone to defend her mother against a mob coming to carry her away? What child? She's a grown woman, and she's out of her mind. Age has nothing to do with this. A parent is a parent, and a child is a child. Glowering, the cardinal turned to the Temple Knights. He gave a silent order to silence Cliff, but the one whose eyes he met was Therese. Cliff looked at her as well. Captain Therese Latria of the Temple Knights Shield Company. Are you also not this woman's child? Did St. Millis not say, a knight does not forsake loyalty, be they faced with any manner of trial? Yet at times, bonds of love must be held higher than those of loyalty. Do you not consider your own mother unworthy of your love? In all these years she's raised you. Did you not ever feel love for her? Do you owe her nothing? Therese looked away. Her face dropped. The fucking Cliff statement's gonna hurt me. Therese looked away, her face stricken. Cliff, his fury unrelenting, cast his eyes about the room. They came to rest on Rudius. Fucking Cliff, dude. Fucking Cliff. You're all nuts. You're gonna just rip this mother away from her child? Did Millis not say, hey, Therese, take this boy out here. Therese, did Millis not say? It's so great. Cliff isn't standing up and getting all emotional for no reason. He's saying, look at your scripture. You're wrong. Look at your scripture. You're wrong. Again, the Pope is saying nothing right now. Cliff is basically reprimanding everybody in the room, and he's using the word of Millis, and Pope is saying nothing. Even the cardinal is being yelled at. The Pope says nothing. One, Cliff is saying truth. Cliff is speaking on scripture. But additionally, the Pope's saying, get him, boy. Show them you're strong. Show them you're the next leader. Show them you'll take that throne. All the while, from Cliff's perspective, it's you're all nuts. You're ruining this family. And I believe, unlike everybody else in that room, he truly believes in what he is speaking. He is very devoted to that scripture. And that scripture says, what you guys are doing is politics. What you're doing is sacrificing and destroying a family right in front of my eyes and my friend's family. You're ruining Ruius's family. He doesn't realize it yet, but you're ruining his family. He's going to try to get Ruius to understand, but you're ruining my friend's family. Which there could be a part of this that Cliff is pain because of the loss of his family, the lack of his family. And he doesn't want Ruius in that same position. Ruius, you love your mother. And your mother's mother is about to be torn away from you. You've been spending this whole time trying to work with them. You were working... Everything else aside, you were working with Therese. And it seems like you're good friends with Therese. Therese was trying so hard for you. And you're going to let her mother get torn away from her. Ruius, why aren't you saying something? The scripture. The scripture backs me. I believe in the scripture. You guys don't. You're a bunch of politicians fighting each other, ripping families apart for your own benefit. Even his own grandfather. But the scripture backs me. And something's wrong here. And you're all acting crazy. Wake up. Rudius, wake up. Therese, wake up. Cardinal, wake up. There's so much... I am not even to the part where I started crying yet. There's so much in this moment with Cliff. There's so much here. So much wake the up, people. So much wake up. So much, this is not what I want. I think Cliff's time away was good for him because he didn't get wrapped up in this crap. But now that he's back, he's getting wrapped up in this stuff. And unlike these people who grew up and lived and breathed this culture that is completely opposite and not following of the Mill's faith, Cliff was able to dig himself into the Mill's faith and dig himself in the scripture. And now that he's back, everything's nuts. He's literally walking in the church and throwing over the table that people are gambling on. And the Pope says nothing. It's so telling. The Pope says nothing. One, because he probably knows Cliff is right. But two was probably it's not going to affect him. The Cardinal right here is the one that's caused all this. Claire's caused all this. He's just letting it happen. But three, he wants his boy to show these people he is a leader. Oh, Cliff. I love Cliff. I love Cliff so much right now. And you, Rudius. Cliff's gaze was, as always, unwavering. It pierced right through him. Is this what you wanted? I never thought I see you stoop to taking hostages. Then, to ensnare your own grandmother and have her locked up in a cell. Are you happy with this? Rudius didn't reply. Cliff's argument was a bit off the mark. He hadn't taken the blessed child because he wanted to, and shutting Claire up in jail obviously hadn't been his idea. Besides, what Claire had done was wrong. That was fact. Do something bad, there was consequences for that, and you can't get out of it by making a big, emotional speech. I know you had disagreements with her, but in all your family quarrels up until now, you resolved them by considering the other's point of view. Norn told me all about it. After the awful ways Norn treated you, you still went to her side when she despaired, without a thought for the past. True. They never got along. She was constantly pushing him away. She was constantly saying mean things about him. What was different? Probably because Norn didn't kidnap one of his loved ones. I mean, there is difference. There's obviously big difference here. But I mean, semantics. Again, did she kidnap Zenith? It's her daughter. If you think about it, technically, Claire has every equal right to be the caretaker of Zenith that Rudius does. It's still her daughter. By a lot of laws in a lot of locations, there'd be more favor given to the mother of a child than to the child of a child. I mean, either way, like I said, it's a good point. It's a good point. You still, according to Norn, she did nasty things and treated you bad, and you still went and pushed to help her. This time, too, you try to work things out. You consulted with your grandfather and Therese to try to find a peaceful resolution. After all that, can you truly say that you're happy with this? So Cliff had a few things mixed up. The only reason that Rudius wanted a peaceful solution was for the sake of the mercenary band and Cliff himself. It wasn't out of familial love. That was a quibble, though, and Cliff wasn't in the mood. So Rudius stayed silent. True. I mean, yeah. Answer me. Rudius Greyrat, do you condone this or not? Your answer will decide my opinion of your character. For some reason, that hit Rudius hard. It actually hurt. Why was that? It hurt Rudius because he's not crazy about seeing one of his family thrown in jail. It was Claire, though. It's not like she treated him like family. Claire was different for Rudius. She was not his family. Something still nagged at him, though. He couldn't work out what it was. And until he did, he couldn't answer Cliff. Look, Cliff, I'll give you an answer. But first, I want to ask Claire something. Is that all right? Cliff was taken aback, but Rudius didn't wait for a reply. Instead, he turned to Claire. There was fear in her eyes, but she met his gaze, undaunted. Why did you take my mother from me? Her expression didn't change. For the good of my daughter and my family. Do you really think marrying off your daughter in her current state would be for her own good? Given the circumstances, I did. Rudius' hands curled into a fist. His jaw clenched tight. How could Claire be like this? She must know that if she said that she was wrong, she'd be off the hook. Rudius fell silent. The whole table looked at him expectantly, as though he suddenly had all the authority. That's when he realized that he may in fact have that. He was still holding the blessed child's arm. From the start, this had never been a discussion amongst equals. Which is more important to you? Your daughter or your family? Both of them. Neither is more important than the other. That irritated him. Why wasn't she trying to persuade him? I think what this, the way that that's worded, it's kind of weird. It says who's more important to you, your family or your daughter? And she says both of them. Neither's more important than the other. And he gets mad at that. I think what that is specifically asking there is who is more important to you? Zenith, your daughter, or Latria's, the name Latria. I think that's what that's saying. The family Latria. Because daughter and family like, Therese and Carlisle and all that kind of stuff. I think it means your reputation, your family. That's why it annoys him. Both are important. That irritated him. Why wasn't she trying to persuade him? She knew that he was the one with the power. If he said that he'd forgive her, the whole thing would go away. Maybe not entirely, but she'd be off the hook for 10-year imprisonment at least. It's not like anyone had died. They could settle for another punishment. Reese thought, come on, get over yourself and say it. Apologize. As Reese hesitated, Claire snorted. You needn't go out of your way for me. I never asked for you to save me. If I am to be punished for what I've done for my daughter's sake, then so be it. Reese was at a loss for words as he thought to himself, what the actual, oh, screw it. This isn't going anywhere. Zenith had defended her. Cliff defended her. Yet now she came out with this. Reese was done. That's all you have to say? I think we're... Huh? As Reese trailed off, something jabbed into his shoulder. It was a blessed child. She no longer wore her serene smile. Instead, her face was blank, unclouded, like a saint. Rudius. What? Spare her. Rudius. Why? Rudius wasn't falling for this. He no longer had any intention of forgiving Claire. If nothing else, she obviously had no intention of working things out. The stupid old hag wanted control over her daughter, and resenting her pesky grandson for getting in the way. I mean, obviously she's speaking up because she knows something. She sees something. And I'm very curious what that is. Obviously, it's going to get into it in the next chapter. It implies it's getting in the next chapter, and she probably sees that. But it's like, I think the moment that she spoke up and said, don't do this, Rudius, forgive her, or whatever, she's obviously going to know something. Like, she's obviously going to know something. Zen is speaking up. Cliff is speaking up. The blessed child sees something in there. She's saying the opposite. It's agitating. It you off, yes. This chick is literally took my mother from me, was going to force her to be in a bed with some dude, some stranger, who's going to knock her up. Yes, all that me off. But it seems like something's saying stop. And it doesn't mean by saying I'll accept this and will walk away that she's going to get Zenith back and she's going to do something to Zenith. You can take Zenith away. It's kind of one of those, you probably should move on. Like there's something you're not seeing here. And again, from Cliff's perspective, I think a lot of it has to do with family and the politics of this whole thing. You're destroying this family with politics. It was like Claire was throwing a tantrum, throwing her toys around because she wasn't getting things her way. Lady Claire was truly thinking of her daughter and her family. Good intentions paved the road to hell. Thinking about others didn't mean anything if you didn't consider any viewpoints other than your own. If you were hell-bent on pushing what you thought was best on someone who didn't want it, you were better off minding your own business. Yeah, Rudy's has a lot of experience with that in his previous life. Plus, what Claire was pushing was seriously awful. No one would want that. I agree. If it was what she was really doing, that's the problem with all this stuff. It's like, it's hard to really get from Rudius' perspective because he tunnel visioned. You can get a little bit from Therese because she was confirming at least the marriage part. But other than that is the question mark. Claire also considers you as part of the family, Rudius. Excuse me? All of this was for your sake as well. That changes everything. That's like I need the next I need to get into the next chapter now. What? This is for you too? She sees something. And I wish that he would ask the blessed child to elaborate, but he instead just chooses to go straight back to Claire. Which is obviously, let's just save it for when they explain everything. We don't want to reveal too much right now. But yeah, the massive question mark is like, wait, it's for you too. This makes me believe that whatever the blessed child, my immediate reaction to this is that whatever the blessed child sees is that in Claire's mind, she was doing something to cure Zenith. I think at least Claire, or at least she sees that Claire believed that whatever she was doing was for the sake of curing Zenith. That would be how Claire is constantly pushing Rudius away and will give Zenith to somebody, or at least make some transaction that she believes, it might not actually be the case, but she believes will lead Zenith to being cured. And I think that's what she means by, it's for you too. It's for the family, it's for Zenith, it's for you, because it will save her. Question mark is what that is. And again, I think that is the man god, because that's why Claire won't say.
It's the man god. Claire will not say. Rudius was puzzled. How did all this fall then? How did they end up here? He needed her to work with him a bit more here. She wasn't making sense. Please, Rudius, trust me. When I looked into her eyes, I knew. Using the blessed child's power then. So this meant Claire had to have some reason. Not that he had any clue what that might be. Claire, can I shed some light on what the blessed child's saying? Because I'm not following. I'm afraid I might have lost myself. I suppose the blessed child must lie sometimes. I'm quite sure I never did anything for you. She was at it again. Cliff and the blessed child could try to cover for her all they liked, but Rudius couldn't back down after that. He did feel a little bad about it, but it was time to put an end to it. He gave off a sigh. I can't reconcile with her when she thinks nothing of me. Claire nodded, her gaze steady. Cliff stared at Rudius in dismay. The blessed child looked sad. Teresa's eyes went to Claire, and Sir Belmont stood up. Zenith. Rudius realized Zenith was standing right in front of him. Slap. Her hand struck his cheek. There was almost no power to the blow. It probably wouldn't leave a mark. What? For some reason, though, it hurt. He felt the place she'd slapped him growing unbearably hot. All of a sudden, tears were rolling down his cheeks. In the time it took for him to realize what was happening, Zenith moved past him. Rudius turned to see Carlyle, the man who stood there, monocled, watched all this run its course, then left. Because he was standing behind Rudius, he didn't see his face, but there was a whole mix of emotions there. Worry, fear, regret. Zenith slapped him too. Just like before, the blow was limp. Afterwards, Zenith kept walking, wobbling with each step. No one stopped her. Not the cathedral knights, not the temple knights, no one. It was like time had frozen around her. At last, she stopped in front of Claire. She raised her hand, palm out, and ready to. No slap came. She cradled Claire's face in both hands, leaning forward until their noses were almost touching, so she could peer into her mother's eyes. From where Rudius stood, he could see Zenith's expression. When Claire looked into her daughter's face, though, the effect was dramatic. First, her eyes widened, then her lips began to tremble, followed by her cheeks, shoulders, and whole body. The shaking spread down her fingertips. Then, as though triggered by a tremor, her hands rose to grip Zenith's hands tight. The cry that burst out of Claire was something between a sob and a moan. She drew Zenith's hand up to her face as though she was going to kiss them, and tears began to stream down her face. Then, perhaps succumbing to the shaking, her knees gave way as she sunk to the ground. A voice came from behind Rudius. Someone ducked past. It was Carlyle. His hands still bound, he rushed to Claire's side and lowered himself beside her. Claire, my dear, you need to stop this. But, Zenith. Claire's face streaked with tears. Carlyle moved as though he wanted to embrace her, but then remembered that he was bound. Instead, he laid his hands atop Claire's, which still clasped Zenith's. She's okay. You needn't worry. She's okay. Carlyle stood, while Claire's sobs echoed through the room. Carlyle looked around to everyone watching. I'm so sorry. I'll tell you everything. I only ask that you reserve judgment until you've heard me out. At this, time moved again. Rudius didn't think Carlyle had been addressing anyone in particular, but everyone looked to Rudius. The blessed child tugged at his sleeve with both hands. He let go of her arm. The jig was up. Fine. Rudius collapsed back in his chair. His cheek burned where Zenith had slapped him. And that is chapter 5. Again, it's super telling that Zenith does things like this. And it's super complicated in my brain to try to figure out exactly what's going on here. And it kind of, again, goes that idea that I think she's always trying to push herself to react to things, but she can't. And then every now and then she gets this moment where she can finally move. Again, something that I always fear with this whole concept is that idea of them being in there but unable to do something. And when Rudius says here is that she does move, and it always involves family, is that idea that finally she has something she can push herself enough emotion in her mind to say move because they need me to move right now. Rudius is making the wrong decision. Family's more important.
Rudius is not stopping this. He can do this. Everybody's looking at Rudius because he has the decision. But he's not doing anything. They're coming to take my mother. I'll stop them. Don't touch my mother. I hate that there's so much lack of communication with the whole thing with Claire, but I mean, it's an assumption. Again, I was kind of keeping that in the back of the mind the whole time, that this is all a miscommunication, that Claire can't say something because of pride, or she can't say something because it requires them admitting something that's against the Millis faith. It's listening to the man god, which is a false god or whatever, or there's some purpose they're making here, or their actions is something that is beneficial to the Cardinal, and the Cardinal doesn't want them to talk. That's why he's sweating. My earlier prediction, this idea of them marrying her off to one of the royalty. I did wonder about the eyes. I wondered about Zenith walking up and staring in Claire's eyes. And yeah, super emotional, because it's a point where Claire just breaks down, falls down, just overtaken with emotion. And it's literally like the first moment we see, finally Claire has emotion. She finally responds. I wonder if that might end up being the manifestation of her power. Can Zenith speak through her eyes now? Can she speak some way to her? Is she speaking to her? Is she looking into her eyes? I mean, my mind immediately went to the idea of what if she's just like the blessed child? That's why there's so much importance for her. Can she read minds now or memories? I don't know. I don't know that that would be the case, but I'm wondering if there's a possibility that she could speak. But either way, it is still an aspect that she walked up there, embraced her mom, and shows that love. And it does really kind of beg that question of, does Claire really truly love Zenith? And she hates that she pushed Zenith away. And now that Zenith is back, she's trying to do good for Zenith. And again, like the blessed child said, she's doing it for you too. Is this all stuff because they're being wrapped up in the man god, and that's why it's beneficial to Rudius? Or is it simply that, yes, the blessed child sees that Claire was doing this to cure Zenith, which is what Rudius wants, because the blessed child would know this, because that's what he told the blessed child, is there a way to get memories back or whatever. He could know that that's probably what he was talking about. And now here Claire is literally, in her mind that she's reading, was trying to save Zenith and recover her memories. But again, the sticking point still is, why can't they say that? Why couldn't Claire say that? And now Carlisle walks up. Apparently he knew what was going on. Every indication so far up until this point was Carlisle had nothing to do with this. It was all her. Which does kind of make me mad, the idea that he was literally saying that I had nothing to do with it. She was working on her own. You know, I'll take the punishment, walks away. No, I'll tell you guys everything. Now, it could be that she filled him in on what was going on, and it was nothing that he was doing. And so now he's like, okay, well, she won't talk. It's gotten a little too far. I'll tell everybody what's going on. But again, he specifically says, I only ask that you reserve judgment until you heard me out. He wants them to hear everything first, which makes me believe that he's going to bring up some stuff that, again, like I said earlier, is going to either be against the Cardinal. It might be bigger. It might be involving even the royalty. Or it can just simply be stuff that is seen as extremely bad in the Millis faith. And he wants them to hear the whole story before you say, oh crap, you're doing that. Hang him or whatever. Her wobbling around. The blank expression. Her mom that never really shows any response to any of this stuff, and suddenly she's trembling and falling. Again, I wonder if she's speaking to her, or is it just a mere fact that Zenith finally showed some emotion to Claire and walked up. I think up until this point, she's probably never seen Zenith respond at all. Rudius has seen her move. Rudius has seen her respond. This is probably the first time Claire has seen her response since Zenith came back. And Carlisle runs up. You gotta stop this. And she's being emotional. I think that's the aspect of Carlisle not wanting her to show an emotion in front of all these leaders. Breaking down, knowing that she has that pride and that it would probably look bad for her. But you don't need to worry. She's okay. You don't need to worry. She's okay. Again, they love Zenith. It's just something keeping them from talking. And I think a lot of it is still Claire and Carlisle's pride in showing their real feelings to Zenith. But there's something else there. There's still something else there. But yeah, massive W for Cliff. And again, I've gotten most into all that stuff and how he just knew how terrible stuff. He spoke with authority. The Pope's totally like, get him, boy. Show him you're a leader. And him, yes, seeing things that Rudius isn't seeing. This is wrong. You're letting this family be destroyed. And again, I get Rudius' side. Claire is horrible. But it is one of those aspects of sometimes I think Rudius may not want to give enough here. Give enough, like, recognition. And I'm with him. I was off in that chapter. But there is an element of not almost, at least from my perspective, not really getting a full sense of what happened in that room. What all did Claire actually say in that room? But even still, I agree with Cliff. Do you want her to go to jail for 10 years? Locked up? Do you want this family destroyed? Why not just take Zenith and go? Why so vindictive? Why do you want her destroyed that much? Why will you not just let it be? Everybody's telling Rudius, you need to chill. Rudius, that's too far. Rudius, in the end, it's still family.
Oh, I just realized. You know, there's a side of me, because I'm thinking this, yes, this whole idea of, like, Zenith just gets up, scares this guy away, goes over, smacks Rudius, smacks Carlisle. Again, that is the sign that this is not her being a child protecting mommy. This is grown-up Zenith. This is her understanding the current situation. Again, I keep getting into this over and over again, but it's something I've dealt with before, is wondering what's all there and how much they've lost, and then realizing in a moment like this, there's still so much in there because she's thinking out this situation. She knows what's going on. It's just there's only these brief moments where she gets enough oomph to get up and move and do something on her own volition and act out. And like Rudius says, it's typically always related to family. The scene feels, for some reason, when I'm recalling this scene right here with her going over and slapping Rudius and slapping Carlisle. Yes, it could be that she understands the situation and she's going after Carlisle because he is not telling the truth. He's not telling my son what's going on. He's not being truthful about the situation, that what you guys are doing, because when Carlisle goes back over there, he says, I'm sorry, everybody. I'll tell you everything. Just please listen. There could be a thing that Zenith knows that he knows, and he's not saying anything. He's saying, she acted on her own. I'll take responsibility. Walk out the door. And Zenith's going, no, you know exactly what's going on. You won't tell my son. You won't tell these people. And now my son is going to have my mother thrown in jail. Slap Rudius. Stop. Slap Carlisle. Tell them. Almost feels like that. Goes back to the mom. I'll take care of it. If they won't do it, it's okay. Or at least maybe a thank you. Thank you, I know what you're doing. And you're going to take the hit for this because nobody else will say anything for you. Again, there's also a side of it. You won't say what the hell you're doing. It's like people talk. There's a communication thing. There's got to be something big. It's got to be something big. But anyways, what I was getting to is, I don't know, when I was reading that moment, the thought here is that they're all getting separated. Claire's going to get thrown in jail for 10 years. Carlisle, we don't know. He says he's taking responsibility. They got him locked up. They're walking him out. They bound him. So it's obvious that he's in trouble too. What he's going to have happen to him, don't know. And Rudius is going to probably take her and go home. What's happening there? Because of the lack of communication, they're getting split up. And this is, if for some reason, what popped in my head immediately was the whole situation with Lilia and Paul and Zenith and Rudius. It's almost the same situation there where somebody did something wrong and there's a conflict, and Zenith in that situation made the tough call for herself. She made a conscious decision right there that she didn't want to split up the family. She looked down at Rudius and said, Zenith, suck it up. I can't separate this family. She could have taken Rudius and walked out the door. She even said that. I thought about taking Rudius and walking out that door. But she chose to suck it up and be selfless in that situation. Even though Paul did that to her, she could have walked out that door and there'd be no argument from anybody. But she chose, I will not walk out that door for the sake of Rudius. And now here, Rudius has that decision where he's been wronged by Claire. Again, this is a very different situation, obviously, but it's what popped in my head. Zenith,
wronged by Paul, chose to forgive them and stay a family. Rudius was wronged by Claire. Technically, she grabbed Zenith. It's not really Rudius, but it wronged Rudius in proxy. He does not like this situation. And he's being selfish in this regard. Again, I agree with Rudius. Claire, I hate her. That whole scene with Claire, but I also acknowledge that scene of him storming out was Rudius's tunnel vision view. I keep sticking on that. The fact that Rudius went out of his way to say, some things happened. He doesn't even remember what all happened. He blacked out. We don't know what happened. He says that he was told later that he blew some guards away, but we don't know what Claire was actually saying there that Rudius wasn't taken account for in that chapter. She could have tried to explain it to Rudius, and he just didn't want to hear it. I wonder about that, because I would think that Aisha at some point would say something like, Rudius, you don't remember that she said something about this? It kind of lines up with this. Maybe Claire's not being bad. But Aisha's on the same boat as Rudius. She doesn't like Claire. Claire's horrible to her. Why would she go out of her way there? And she might not have heard it either. She might have blocked it out too. Anyways, Rudius, you have that opportunity, just like Zenith, to stop. And I almost feel like it makes sense that Zenith would stand up, because she has experience with saying, yes, you've been wronged, Rudius. I was wronged by Paul, but I wanted to keep the family together. And you've been wronged by Claire, but you should want to keep this family together. Don't destroy this family. Cliff knows. He's stepping up. He's saying, stop, Rudius. My gosh, massive W in Cliff. This whole segment. Freaking love Cliff so much. But yeah, keep it together, Rudius. That's what Zenith, I think, is trying to say here. That's why she went around smacking them. Keep your family together. Tell them. Stop this. God, I want a Zenith chapter so fucking bad. Just to know if she got something in there she's thinking the entire time. Oh, it hurts so much. Anyways, I'm going to call it there. That is chapter 5, and we'll see where things go from here. Like I said before, we will be doing a first-time read recording of 6 and 7, as everybody has requested. I can only imagine what it's going to be about. Getting up to this point, I know exactly why you all want me to live read it. I don't know, it could be some like mind-blowing stuff that's coming up, and maybe everybody wants to see my shock face for all this stuff. It does obviously seem like Carlisle and Claire really badly don't want to say anything. They were keeping their mouths shut super badly, and so it might be something extremely big. There'd be something coming up that is very important, and it could be pretty heartbreaking or very twisted or something like that. Maybe it's going to be a big mind-blowing thing, but I'm assuming it's going to be Zenith. And again, I kind of think that it might be that they know some way of curing her, and they were putting that into play. That's why the Blessed Child is speaking up. My gosh, I love the Blessed Child. I'm liking the Blessed Child a lot. She's really cool, and she's super cute. Maybe I'm turning into a Blessed Child, one of the otaku that are swarming around her little entourage. I'm gonna join the keepers of Anastasia to be a Blessed Child keeper. But yeah, I'm wondering if they know something and it's going to be a big thing. But I think it's probably Zenith. You all want me to see Zenith do something. I'm surprised it wasn't for this moment, so I'm guessing it's not simply her moving around. There's a side effect of people saying they want me to do a live read. It's like, yeah, I can start wrapping up an idea of what might be coming. I know you all know that I have a massive soft spot for Zenith. Every time she moves, I get emotional, and you're all just like, I want to see him cry. But anyways, we'll see. We'll see. But I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday. As always, if you guys did, make sure to hit that like button before you leave. It's the best way to support the channel and what we're doing here without even having to do anything else. But I appreciate your guys' kind words, all of your support. A lot of new people popping up and saying, hey, I got caught up. Welcome to Mushoku Mondays as premiere. And you can suffer like everybody else and wait for an entire week for the next chapters to come out. They're all like, yeah, I enjoyed it so much, but now I got to wait a week for one chapter. Just 2 chapters. Anyways, it's a fun journey. I don't want to rush things. That's also partly why I've kind of split 3, 4, and 5, is because it's like, I don't want to cram a crap ton of chapters into 1 week, basically have to edit all week, tire the hell out of myself. I never want. We did that before. Andrew nearly burnt himself out. Everybody's like, chill, Andrew. Chill, Andrew. Just take your time, Andrew. Enjoy the ride. I want to enjoy the ride. I don't want to rush through chapters. I want to give each chapter its feel. And so it kind of makes me wish that I didn't go right into 5 like I did this last week, because I could have speculated a lot on that room. And I love doing that kind of stuff. Like, what is everybody? Why is everybody in this room? Who's behind everything?
I had my speculations already, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but was not expecting Zenith and Carlisle and Claire right here. Was not expecting Cliff. Oh, this is a Cliff W chapter so much. Anyways, I thank you guys so much for dropping by. Hope you guys enjoyed. And as per usual, greatly appreciate guys that supports monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that good stuff. It means a great deal to me. Until the next Mushoku Mondays, y'all have a great rest of your week. Y'all take care. Scan the table. Reese eyed Orsted.
I am Belmon Vet. I am Belnon Vet. I am Belnon Nash Venick. I am Belmon Vet.
I knew a Galgar Vash Ninnik. The only reason Rudius wanted peaceful. The only reason that Rudius wanted a peaceful. The only reason Rudius wanted a peaceful. The only reason that Rudius wanted a peaceful. The Pope declared victory. The Pope